Ever feel like, you just need a complete reset? Like life just handed you like a stack of go back to start cards.
Yeah.
And you're not even sure how you got there.
Right.
That's kind of the vibe in Zechariah, right?
Yeah.
Which we're diving into today.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at the first few chapters where the exiled Jews are back in Jerusalem after decades of captivity.
Yeah. Talk about needing a second chance. Talk about needing a clean slate.
Oh, absolutely.
It's hard to imagine, right?
Yeah.
Returning to a homeland you barely remember.
Right.
Tasked with rebuilding.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. It's like the sheer scale of God's faithfulness.
It is.
And this Cornerstone Connections guide that we're using points out that Zechariah actually means Yahweh remembers.
I love that.
It's like his name
It's true.
is a message.
It's a message.
In itself.
Yes.
A constant reminder.
Absolutely. And you see this message woven throughout the book because they're back in Jerusalem. They're trying to rebuild the temple, right? But, it's tough going.
Right.
It's hard work.
Right.
They need that reassurance that God's still with them, that he hasn't forgotten them.
He still got them. Yeah, okay. So then Zechariah chapter 3 throws this curveball, right? Vision of Joshua the high priest standing before an angel, but he's covered, like head to toe, in filthy clothes.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
Not a good look. Not exactly, priestly holiness.
No, not at all. And that's where the symbolism gets really interesting because those dirty clothes, it's not just about like physical uncleanliness.
Right.
They represent sin, impurity, everything that separates us from a holy God.
Right.
And remember that Joshua, his whole role was to lead worship, to stand before God on behalf of the people. So this vision, it exposes a problem, a barrier that needs addressing.
Yeah, like they're trying to rebuild, but it's like, hello, reality check.
Yes.
This isn't just about bricks and mortar. We're talking about spiritual renewal too.
Yes.
But then the angel does something amazing. He says, take away his filthy garments and give him clean ones. Like, what a wardrobe change.
Right.
Talk about a divine wardrobe change.
What a makeover. It's like a powerful image of forgiveness and restoration.
Yeah.
Those clean garments, they represent God's righteousness.
Yeah.
His holiness covering us completely. And it's not something that we earn.
Right.
Like a reward for good behavior. It's purely through his grace, his undeserved favor.
I was just thinking about Adam and Eve in the garden.
Yes.
After they sinned, God clothed them, right?
Yes.
With animal skins. And the guide was pointing out how this foreshadows, Jesus' ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
Covering our sin with his own righteousness.
Yes. Making us presentable, so to speak, before God.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've all got those moments where we feel unworthy.
Oh, absolutely.
And those inner critics or whatever, those voices are like, you're not good enough.
All the time.
But this vision of Joshua, it's like God saying, nope, I got this. You're covered. Like he doesn't want to leave us wallowing in our mistakes, He wants to lift us up, to clothe us in his grace.
Oh, beautiful.
It's almost like God saying, yeah, your past, it doesn't define you.
Right.
I'm giving you a fresh start, a clean slate. It's powerful.
It is.
This whole thing with Joshua, though,
it
makes you wonder, like, why even go through all that? The rebuilding? I mean, couldn't God just start over? Like a clean slate?
Yeah.
Brand new generation?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And it kind of gets to the heart of who God is.
Right.
He could have, right? He could have wiped the slate clean. Absolutely. But instead, he chooses to work with this remnant. This group still carrying the weight of past mistakes. And it shows his incredible patience, his willingness to meet us right where we are, no matter how messy it is.
It's true. It's like he's saying, I'm not giving up on you. I see your potential even when you don't.
Exactly.
And that's encouraging. I mean, when you feel like you've blown it,
And think about it this way, right? God chose to work with those returning exiles, to guide them right through this rebuilding process.
Yeah.
Because he was invested. He was invested in their growth. He wanted them to experience the joy of restoration.
Right.
That sense of fulfillment that comes from partnering with him to rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
To rebuild their nation.
And isn't that what we all kind of crave deep down, right? That sense of purpose, of being part of something bigger.
Absolutely.
And this guide, it keeps emphasizing, like, God's in the business of making things new.
Yeah.
Transforming, like, brokenness into beauty. And it's not just some, abstract theological concept, right? Like, this is something he wants to do in our lives too.
It is.
Yeah.
And it all starts with recognizing that we can't do it on our own.
Yeah.
We need his grace. We need his forgiveness. And we need his guidance. Just like those returning exiles, they needed a blueprint to rebuild the temple.
Yeah.
We need God's word, right, to guide us as we rebuild our lives.
So we've been talking a lot about individual restoration.
Right.
But the guide also mentions this idea of like a restored kingdom.
Yes.
Something bigger.
Yeah.
Beyond just us, right? What's that all about?
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting, right? So Zechariah's message wasn't just about rebuilding a temple.
Right.
Or restoring a nation.
Right.
It pointed towards something much, much bigger. The establishment of God's eternal kingdom.
Wow.
Right. A time when his reign of peace and justice will cover the earth.
Okay, so we're talking like ultimate comeback story.
The ultimate.
Like a cosmic do-over.
Right.
Where everything gets put right.
Exactly. And this promise, it wasn't just for those exiles, right?
Right.
It's for all of us.
Wow.
It's a reminder that no matter what's happening in the world,
Yeah.
right? No matter how bleak things seem, God's still in control. He's working behind the scenes.
Right.
He's orchestrating events. And he invites us to be part of it, to join him in bringing about his kingdom here on earth.
Okay, but what does that even look like practically? I mean, how do we live with that hope? How do we become these agents of restoration? I mean, in a world that feels so, I don't know, fractured.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It boils down to this. We extend that same grace, that same forgiveness that we've been given to others. We become ambassadors
Right.
of reconciliation, showing the world what God's love looks like in action.
Like walking, talking billboards.
That's it.
For God's grace.
Yes.
But that's not always easy.
It's not.
Especially when we're surrounded by so much, I don't know, negativity and brokenness. How do we keep that hope alive, that vision, like when things are tough?
Well, remember what we said about those exiles.
Right.
They faced opposition
Right.
and discouragement at every turn, but they kept going. Why? Because they clung to God's promises. They remembered his faithfulness.
Right.
And they trusted that he would see them through.
So it's about holding on to that bigger picture.
Yes.
What God is doing, even when things feel, I don't know, chaotic.
Yes. Even when it's overwhelming. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about remembering that we're not alone in this journey. God is with us every step of the way, guiding us, strengthening us, empowering us to be agents of his grace and his restoration.
It's true.
And that brings us back right to the core message of Zechariah.
Yeah.
It's a message of hope, of second chances. It's God's unwavering commitment to making all things new.
It's like, that saying, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
It takes on a whole new meaning.
Right.
When it's God walking beside you.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of Zechariah's message. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't sugarcoat the challenges. Remember how the guide talks about Satan working overtime to discourage those exiles? Like throwing obstacles in their path,
Right.
whispering doubts in their ears,
Oh,
trying to convince them that the whole rebuilding project was hopeless.
Which, let's be real, sounds a lot like our lives sometimes.
Right.
I mean, we set these goals, we have these dreams,
Yeah.
and then bam, life throws a curveball.
Right.
Inner critic shows up, and then suddenly you're second guessing everything.
Exactly.
So how do we fight back against that? How do we hold on to hope when it feels like everything is just falling apart?
Well, the guide points to a really powerful weapon against that discouragement.
Yeah.
And that's remembering God's promises, remembering that he's not just the author of our faith,
Right.
but he's the finisher.
He is.
Just like he stayed faithful to those exiles,
Right.
guiding them through every challenge.
Yeah.
He'll do the same for us.
It's like having that friend,
Yes.
that's always in your corner, cheering you on, reminding you of your strength when you forget. And they believe in you, even when you don't.
Exactly. And that's the kind of unwavering support we have in God. He sees the bigger picture,
Right.
the potential within us, even when we're blinded by our own limitations. He is committed to our growth, to our transformation, and ultimately to our restoration.
And speaking of restoration, there's this incredible story that the guide highlights at the end.
Yes.
About this woman who found the strength to forgive the man who murdered her brother.
Powerful.
Talk about expending grace in the face of unimaginable pain.
It's a powerful real-life example of how God's love can break down even the toughest walls, right?
Yeah.
Of resentment, bitterness.
Yeah.
It reminds us that forgiveness, it isn't about condoning wrong actions.
Right.
It's about releasing ourselves from that grip of anger, of pain, allowing God to heal our hearts, right, and make us whole.
It's like that act of forgiveness. It becomes this catalyst for a different kind of rebuilding.
Yes.
Like restoration of relationships, mending those broken places in ourselves, in our communities.
That's good.
It's really inspiring and honestly a little daunting, you know?
It is. Because it challenges us to live out this message of Zechariah in our own lives.
Right.
To be people marked by hope, by forgiveness, by that unshakable belief in second chances, both for ourselves and for others.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into Zechariah, what's the one thought that you're hoping our listeners are left pondering? Like, what's the takeaway? What do we want them to remember?
I think it boils down to this.
Yeah.
If God, in his infinite mercy, could offer forgiveness and a fresh start to a nation that had repeatedly turned away from him, imagine what he's willing to do in your life.
Yeah.
You know, when you seek him with an open and sincere heart.
Wow.
Just like those returning exiles, you have incredible potential for a Zechariah-style comeback.
I love it.
The question is, are you ready? Are you ready to embrace it?